Holy crap, I never thought I'd be the guy telling this kind of story, but here I am. You know those moments in life when everything seems to be going smoothly, and then, bam, your whole world gets flipped upside down? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. One minute I'm working my butt off to build a future with my girlfriend, and the next, I'm walking in on her with another dude. And not just any dude, but the guy who got the job I turned down. Talk about a double whammy, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning of this mess. My name's Jake, and I'm just your average 30-year-old guy trying to make it in the big city. I work as a facility operator, which is a fancy way of saying I'm the guy who keeps things running smoothly in office buildings. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills and then some. I've been dating this girl, let's call her Sarah, for about 4 years now. She was my first serious relationship, and man, did I fall hard for her. Now, I don't like to make a big deal about race, but I guess it's important to mention that I'm Indian American. Sarah, she's your all-American girl next door type. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the whole package. Her family? Well, let's just say they weren't exactly thrilled about their little girl dating outside her race. They were polite enough when we'd visit, but you could cut the tension with a knife. Sarah told me once that her mom said, "If you're gonna date someone who isn't white, couldn't you at least find a rich Indian doctor?" Yeah, real classy, right? Anyway, Sarah wasn't new to the dating game. She'd had a couple of serious boyfriends before me, both tall white guys. I guess I was a bit of a change of pace for her. But we clicked, you know? We had this connection that I thought was unbreakable. Man, was I wrong about that. So here's the deal. Living in New York City ain't cheap. I make decent money, about $55K a year base salary. But with overtime, I can bump that up to around $80K. It's not exactly rolling in dough, but it's enough to get by and save a little. Sarah and I had been talking about maybe buying a place together, so I was putting in extra hours to make it happen. Then, this opportunity comes up at work. They're looking for a new superintendent to manage a cluster of buildings. It's a step up from my current gig, with a salary of $75K. Now I know what you're thinking. That's less than what I make with overtime. But here's the kicker. It's less hours, more money per hour, more time for a life outside of work. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? Well, that's what I thought too. I was all excited about it, thinking this could be our ticket to that condo we'd been eyeing. So I bring it up to Sarah, figuring she'd be thrilled. But you know what she says? "Baby, I think you should stick with your current job. You can make more money that way." Now, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not always the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to relationships. But looking back, I should have seen the red flags waving right in front of my face. But nope, I was too busy trying to be the perfect boyfriend, too focused on making Sarah and her family happy. So, like an idiot, I listened to her. I turned down the promotion and kept grinding away at my current job. To make matters worse, I even picked up more overtime shifts. Sarah kept encouraging me to work more and more. At first, I thought she was just being supportive, you know? Like, she wants us to have a better future together. But man, was I off the mark. Before I knew it, I was working myself to the bone. We're talking 16-hour days, 5 days a week. I was exhausted, but Sarah seemed happier than ever. She'd come visit me at work sometimes, chatting with the guys on my crew. There was this one guy, let's call him Mike. He was always hanging around when Sarah visited, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Fast forward a couple of months, and Mike gets offered that superintendent position I turned down. I won't lie, it stung a bit. But I figured, hey, I'm still making more money overall, right? That's what Sarah kept telling me anyway. Little did I know, while I was busy working myself half to death, Sarah and Mike were getting cozy behind my back. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. At this point, I was still blissfully unaware of what was going on. I was just focused on saving up for our future, trying to prove to Sarah's family that I could provide for her. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs. How Sarah was always pushing me to work more, how she'd light up when Mike was around, how our intimacy had taken a nosedive. But you know what they say about hindsight being 20/20ths? At the time, I was just too tired and too trusting to see what was right in front of my face. So there I was, working my tail off, thinking I was building a future for Sarah and me. Man, was I in for a rude awakening. But before we get to the big reveal, Let me paint you a picture of how things were going down. Sarah and I had just renewed our lease for another year. We were living in this tiny one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, nothing fancy, but it was ours, or so I thought. Anyway, I'm working these insane hours, barely home except to sleep and shower. Sarah's still pushing me to work more, saying stuff like, "Jake, honey, don't you want us to have nice things? And just think about how impressed my parents will be when we can afford that condo." Now, I'm not gonna lie. A part of me was starting to get a little suspicious. I mean, who wants their partner to be away all the time? But then I'd think about how supportive Sarah was being. How she was always telling me how proud she was of my hard work. Plus, I was so damn tired all the time, I didn't have the energy to really question things. But then, little things started to catch my attention, like how Sarah would always be on her phone, texting and giggling. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd just say, "Oh, just some work friends." Or how she started going out more with her girlfriends on nights when I was working late. Again, I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured she was just trying to keep herself busy while I was working so much. Then there was this one time, about 2 months before everything blew up. I came home early from a shift because I was feeling under the weather. As I'm walking up to our apartment, I hear Sarah laughing. That special kind of laugh she usually only used with me, if you know what I mean. My heart starts racing, and I'm thinking, no way, she wouldn't do that to me. I unlock the door as quietly as I can, and nothing. Sarah's just sitting on the couch watching TV. She looked a little flustered, but she said she was just on the phone with her mom and had to hang up quick when she heard me come in. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something in my gut was telling me that something wasn't right. Still, I pushed it down. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that Sarah loved me and would never do anything to hurt me. Around this time, I also started noticing how Sarah was always talking about Mike. You remember Mike, right? The guy who got the superintendent job I turned down. She'd say things like, "Oh, Mike was telling me about this great restaurant," or "Mike's so funny he told the best joke today." It was always Mike this, Mike that, but whenever I'd bring up how much she was talking about him, she'd get defensive. "What, I can't have male friends now?" she'd say. "Don't be so insecure, Jake." And like an idiot, I'd back off. I didn't want to be that jealous, controlling boyfriend, Plus, I trusted Sarah. We'd been together for 4 years, for crying out loud. We were talking about marriage, kids, the whole 9 yards. She wouldn't throw all that away, right? Wrong. So wrong. The day it all came crashing down started like any other. I'd been working non-stop for weeks, barely seeing Sarah except when she'd stop by my work to bring me lunch or coffee. Sweet of her, right? Yeah, not so much, as I'd soon find out. Anyway, I woke up feeling like death warmed over. My head was pounding, my throat was on fire, and I could barely drag myself out of bed. I called in sick for the first time in months. Sarah seemed surprised to see me still at home when she left for work, but she just gave me a quick peck on the cheek and said she hoped I felt better soon. I spent most of the day sleeping, trying to kick whatever bug I'd caught. Around 3 p.m., I started feeling a bit better, so I decided to grab a shower. As I'm standing under the hot water, trying to clear my head, I hear the front door open. I figure it's Sarah, maybe coming home early to check on me. I get out of the shower, wrap a towel around my waist, and head out to the living room. And that's when my whole world came crashing down. There's Sarah, all right, but she's not alone. She's wrapped around Mike, kissing him like her life depends on it. They're so caught up in each other, they don't even notice me at first. I just stand there, frozen, unable to believe what I'm seeing. It's like my brain can't process it. This can't be happening, right? This has to be some fever dream or something. But then Sarah sees me. Her eyes go wide and she pushes Mike away so hard he stumbles. "Jake!" she gasps. "What are you doing home?" "What am I doing home? What am I doing home?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to curl up in a ball and pretend none of this was happening. But instead I just stood there, dripping wet, staring at the woman I loved and the man she'd been cheating on me with. Mike, to his credit, looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. "Man, I'm so sorry," he started to say, but I cut him off. Get out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. When neither of them moved, I lost it. Get the fuck out! I roared. Mike practically ran for the door. Sarah tried to follow him, but I blocked her path. Not you, I said. You're going to explain what the hell is going on? And that's when the floodgates opened. Sarah started crying, saying how sorry she was, how it didn't mean anything, how she still loved me. But with each word, I could feel my heart hardening. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a drunken slip-up. This was a full-blown affair. As Sarah sobbed and made excuses, all I could think about was how many times she'd pushed me to work more, to be away from home. How many times she'd told me she was proud of me for working so hard. And all along, she was using that time to screw around with Mike. I felt like such a fool. All those late nights, all those extra shifts, all for what? So Sarah could have more time to cheat on me? So she could play house with Mike while I was busting my ass to build a future for us? As I stood there, still dripping wet from my shower, listening to Sarah's tearful confessions and excuses, I felt like I was in some kind of twisted nightmare. But let me tell you, the nightmare was only just beginning. How long? I managed to choke out, cutting off Sarah's stream of apologies. She hesitated, and I knew whatever she was about to say was going to hurt. 3 months, she finally whispered. 3 months. 90 days. A whole season of betrayal. I did the math in my head and realized it started right around the time Mike got that promotion. The promotion I turned down because Sarah convinced me to. Did you plan this? I asked, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. Did you talk me out of taking that job so Mike could get it? Sarah's eyes widened. No, Jake, I swear it wasn't like that. It just happened. But I wasn't buying it. Too many things were starting to add up. Is that why you kept pushing me to work more overtime? So you'd have more time with him? She didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. I felt sick to my stomach. All those nights I'd come home exhausted, barely able to keep my eyes open, and Sarah had been out with Mike. All those times she'd encouraged me to pick up extra shifts, telling me how proud she was of my hard work. It had all been a lie. Did you sleep with him here, in our bed? I asked, dreading the answer but needing to know. Sarah's face crumpled. Jake, please. Answer the question, Sarah. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Jake. I never meant for this to happen. I love you. I really do. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Love me? You've got a funny way of showing it. I turned away from her, unable to look at her face anymore. My eyes landed on our bookshelf filled with photos of us together, smiling, happy, in love. Or so I thought. Now those memories felt tainted, poisoned by Sarah's betrayal. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why did you do it? Sarah took a deep breath. I don't know. At first, it was just harmless flirting. Mike would compliment me, make me feel special, and then, I don't know. It just escalated. And I guess I didn't make you feel special enough, huh? I spat out bitterly. That's not it, Sarah protested. You were always working. We never saw each other anymore. I felt lonely, Jake. I whirled around to face her. Lonely? I was working my ass off for us, for our future, the future you kept pushing for. Sarah flinched at my raised voice. I know, I'm sorry, I got caught up in the excitement, I guess. Mike was there and you weren't, and what? You just couldn't help yourself? I shook my head in disbelief. You know what the worst part is, Sarah? It's not even the cheating, it's the lying, the manipulation. You pushed me to work more so you could sneak around with Mike. You talked me out of a promotion that would have given us more time together. Was any of this real? Did you ever actually love me? Sarah reached out to touch my arm, but I jerked away. Of course I loved you, Jake. I still do. This thing with Mike, it was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. Please, can we just talk about this? Maybe we can work it out. I stared at her, hardly recognizing the woman I thought I knew. Work it out? Are you serious right now? You've been cheating on me for months, Sarah. Months! With a guy from my work, no less. How am I supposed to trust you ever again? She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to stop her. No, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I can't. I can't do this right now. I need to get out of here. I turned and headed for our bedroom, or what I thought was our bedroom. Now I realized it had probably been more Sarah and Mike's bedroom lately. The thought made me want to throw up. As I was grabbing some clothes, Sarah followed me, still pleading. "Jake, please, where are you going? We need to talk about this." I shoved some clothes into a duffel bag, not even paying attention to what I was packing. "I'm going to my brother's. I can't be here right now. I can't look at you." "But what about our lease? The rent?" Sarah asked, her voice small. I laughed bitterly. "Seriously? That's what you're worried about right now? Figure it out yourself. Maybe Mike can help you pay it." I brushed past her, heading for the door. As I reached for the handle, Sarah called out one last time. "Jake, please. I love you. We can fix this." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Without turning around, I said, "You know what, Sarah? I don't think we can. And right now, I'm not sure I even want to try." With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I stood in the hallway, my whole body shaking, I realized that this was it. The life I thought I had, the future I'd been working so hard for, it was all gone, shattered by Sarah's betrayal. I made my way down to the street, my mind reeling. I had no idea what I was going to do next. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that apartment, couldn't be around Sarah. I needed time to think, to process what had just happened. As I hailed a cab to head to my brother's place, I couldn't help but wonder, how had I been so blind? And more importantly, where do I go from here? The next few days were a blur. I crashed at my brother Tom's place, sleeping on his lumpy couch and trying to make sense of what had happened. Tom was great about it, didn't push me to talk, just kept me supplied with beer and pizza. But I knew I couldn't hide out forever. After about a week, I decided it was time to face the music. I needed to go back to the apartment and figure out what to do next. Tom offered to come with me for moral support, but I knew this was something I had to do on my own. When I got to the apartment, Sarah was there. She looked like hell, eyes all puffy from crying, hair a mess. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Old habits die hard, I guess. But then I remembered why we were in this situation, and that urge quickly faded. "Jake," she said, her voice cracking, "I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared so many meals, made so many plans for our future. Now it felt like a stranger's furniture. Sarah started talking, a flood of words pouring out of her. She told me how sorry she was, how she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She swore up and down that she'd ended things with Mike, that she wanted to make it work with me. "I love you, Jake," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Please, can't we try to work this out?" I took a deep breath. "Sarah, I've had a lot of time to think over the past week. And the thing is, I'm not sure I can get past this. You didn't just cheat on me. You manipulated me. You encouraged me to work more so you could spend time with him. You talked me out of a promotion that would have been good for us, just so your boyfriend could get it instead." Sarah flinched at the word boyfriend. "He's not my boyfriend, Jake. It was just a stupid fling. It didn't mean anything." "It meant something to me," I said quietly. "It meant the end of us." Sarah's face crumpled. "No, Jake, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't give up on us." I shook my head. "I'm not the one who gave up on us, Sarah. You did that when you decided to sleep with Mike." We talked for hours, going round and round in circles. Sarah cried, begged, made promises. But the more she talked, the more certain I became that I couldn't stay with her. The trust was gone, and without trust, what did we have? Finally, I stood up. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but I can't do this anymore. I think it's best if we end things now." "But what about the apartment?" she asked, her voice small. "We've got 8 months left on the lease." I sighed. Of course, she was worried about practicalities. "I'll keep paying my half of the rent until the lease is up, but I'm not living here anymore. I'll come by when you're at work to get the rest of my stuff." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. As I turned to leave, she called out, Jake, I really am sorry. I hope someday you can forgive me. I paused at the door. Maybe someday, Sarah, but not today. With that, I walked out, closing the door on that chapter of my life. The next few weeks were tough. I threw myself into work, picking up even more overtime than before. But this time, it wasn't to save for a future with Sarah. It was to distract myself from the pain of our breakup. I also had to deal with the fallout at work. Word had gotten around about what happened, and suddenly everyone was walking on eggshells around me. Mike had transferred to another location, thank God, but I still had to deal with the pitying looks and whispered conversations that stopped as soon as I walked into a room. One day, about a month after the breakup, my boss called me into his office. I figured it was about work, but as soon as I sat down, I knew it was something else. "Jake," he said, looking uncomfortable, "I know you've been going through a tough time lately, and I want you to know that the company supports you. In fact, we've been impressed with how you've handled everything." I nodded, not sure where this was going. "That's why," he continued, "I wanted to let you know that the superintendent position has opened up again, and we'd like to offer it to you." I blinked, surprised. "Really? Even after everything?" My boss nodded. "You've proven yourself, Jake. You're hardworking, reliable, and you've shown real maturity in a difficult situation. We think you'd be perfect for the job." I sat there for a moment, stunned. Then slowly I started to smile. "Thank you, sir. I'd be honored to accept." As I walked out of his office, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time since the breakup, I felt hopeful about the future. That night, as I was packing up the last of my stuff from Sarah's apartment, she was out with friends, I came across a photo of us from happier times. We were at the beach, both smiling widely at the camera. I remembered how happy we'd been that day, how sure I'd been that Sarah was the one. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. But then I realized something. Yes, Sarah had hurt me. Yes, she'd betrayed my trust in the worst way possible. But in doing so, she'd also set me free. Free from a relationship that wasn't as solid as I thought. Free from a future that might have been built on lies. I put the photo back in the box and closed it up. As I walked out of the apartment for the last time, I felt like I was closing a door on my old life and opening a new one. The next day, I started my new job as superintendent. It was challenging, but in a good way. I was learning new skills, meeting new people, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just treading water. Sure, there were still tough days. Days when I missed Sarah, when I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But then I'd remember how it felt to be betrayed, to realize that the person I trusted most had been lying to me for months, and I knew I'd made the right decision. As the weeks turned into months, I started to feel like myself again. I even went on a few dates, nothing serious, but it was nice to know that there was life after Sarah. One day, about 6 months after the breakup, I ran into Mike at a coffee shop. For a moment, we just stared at each other, neither of us sure what to say. Then Mike cleared his throat. "Jake, man, I'm sorry," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "What I did, it was messed up. I know it doesn't make it right, but I want you to know that Sarah and it's over. Has been for a while." I nodded, surprised to find that I didn't feel the anger I expected. "Thanks for telling me, Mike. I appreciate it." As I walked away, I realized something. I was okay. Not perfect, not completely healed, but okay. And for now, that was enough. As the months rolled by, I found myself settling into a new rhythm. The promotion to superintendent came with its own set of challenges, but I was surprised to find that I actually enjoyed the work. It was a far cry from the endless overtime shifts I'd been pulling before, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a decent work-life balance. But let's be real. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were still nights when I'd lie awake, replaying everything that had happened with Sarah. I'd wonder if there was something I could have done differently, if there were signs I should have seen. It's funny how the mind works, isn't it? Even when you know someone's done you wrong, there's still that part of you that wants to shoulder some of the blame. One Saturday morning, About 8 months after the breakup, I was at my favorite diner, nursing a cup of coffee and scrolling through my phone. That's when I saw it. A post from Sarah. She was at some fancy restaurant, all dolled up with a guy I didn't recognize. The caption read, "New beginnings." I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little. But what surprised me more was that the pain was more of a dull ache than the sharp stab it would have been a few months ago. Progress, I guess. As I was contemplating this, the bell over the diner door jingled, and in walked Lisa, one of the teachers from the school in my building complex. We'd chatted a few times when she'd come in with maintenance requests, and I'd always thought she was cute, in a girl next door kind of way. "Hey, Jake," she said, spotting me. "Mind if I join you?" I gestured to the empty seat across from me. "Be my guest." We got to talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. Lisa was easy to talk to, funny in a dry sort of way that I appreciated. When she mentioned that she was heading to a local art fair later, I found myself asking if she'd like company. "I'd love that," she said, smiling in a way that made her whole face light up. The art fair was actually pretty fun. Lisa knew a lot about art and explained things to me in a way that didn't make me feel like an idiot. We laughed at some of the more, let's say, abstract pieces, and I even ended up buying a small painting for my new apartment. As the sun started to set, we grabbed some food from a food truck and sat on a nearby bench. That's when Lisa turned to me, a serious look on her face. "Jake, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what happened with your ex? I've heard rumors around the building, but I'd rather hear it from you." I hesitated for a moment. I hadn't really talked about it with anyone outside of Tom and a couple of close friends, but something about Lisa made me feel like I could open up. So I told her everything. The long hours I'd worked, Sarah's encouragement, the promotion I turned down, and finally, the betrayal. Lisa listened without interrupting, her face a mix of sympathy and something else I couldn't quite place. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Jake, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but can I be honest?" I nodded, bracing myself. "Sarah sounds like a real piece of work, and I know this might sound harsh, but I think you dodged a bullet. Anyone who could manipulate you like that, who could betray you so thoroughly, you're better off without them." I blinked, surprised by her bluntness. But as her words sank in, I realized she was right. For months I'd been carrying around this weight, this sense that I'd lost something precious. But had I really? Or had I just been freed from a relationship that was built on lies? "You know what, Lisa? I think you're right," I said, feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. She smiled, bumping her shoulder against mine. "Of course I'm right. I'm a teacher, remember? We're always right." We both laughed, and just like that, the heavy moment passed. We spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing, and when it was time to say goodbye, I found myself not wanting the night to end. "This was fun," Lisa said as we stood outside her apartment building. "We should do it again sometime." "Definitely," I agreed. And then, before I could overthink it, I added, "Maybe dinner next time, like a date?" Lisa's smile widened. "I'd like that, Jake. I'd like that a lot." As I walked home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not just for a potential new relationship, but for my future in general. For the first time since everything went down with Sarah, I felt like I was truly moving forward. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Lisa and I started dating, and it was different. Good different. She was straightforward in a way Sarah never was, always saying exactly what she meant. No games, no manipulation. It was refreshing. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. I still had moments of doubt, times when I'd pull back, scared of getting hurt again. But Lisa was patient, understanding. She never pushed me to move faster than I was comfortable with. About a month into our relationship, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. It was bound to happen eventually, living in the same city and all, but it still caught me off guard. "Jake," she said, looking as surprised as I felt. "How are you?" "I'm good," I replied, and was surprised to find that I meant it. "How about you?" We made small talk for a few minutes, And I noticed that Sarah kept glancing at my left hand, probably checking for a ring. When she asked if I was seeing anyone, I told her about Lisa. "That's great, Jake," she said, but I could see the flash of hurt in her eyes. "I'm happy for you." As we said our goodbyes, Sarah hesitated, then said, "Jake, I know it probably doesn't mean much now, but I really am sorry. For everything." I looked at her, this woman I'd once thought I'd spend my life with, and felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just a vague sense of sadness for what could have been. "I know, Sarah," I said. "I hope you're happy too." As I watched her walk away, I realized something. I was over her, really, truly over her. The Sarah I'd loved, the future we'd planned. It was all in the past now, and for the first time, I was okay with that. That night, as Lisa and I cooked dinner together in my apartment, laughing over some silly joke she'd made, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. This wasn't the future I'd planned, but maybe, just maybe, it was better than the one I'd lost. Lisa and I are still going strong. We moved in together about 6 months ago, and let me tell you, it's been an adjustment. Not in a bad way, mind you. It's just different, you know? After everything that went down with Sarah, I was scared of letting someone in again. But Lisa, she's patient, understanding. She gets that I've got baggage, and she doesn't try to rush me or push me into anything I'm not ready for. There was this one night, not too long after we moved in together. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing. I'd had a nightmare about Sarah and Mike, my mind conjuring up all sorts of scenarios I'd rather not think about. Lisa woke up too, took one look at my face and just knew. She didn't say anything, just held me until my breathing evened out. That's when I knew. This woman, she's something special. Work's been good too. I've really settled into the superintendent role. It's challenging, sure, but in a good way. I feel like I'm actually making a difference, you know? And the best part? I'm home for dinner most nights. No more endless overtime shifts. No more missing out on life because I'm always at work. I ran into Mike again a few months back. It was at a work conference. Turns out he's still with the company, just in a different division. For a moment, it was awkward as hell. I mean, what do you say to the guy who slept with your ex-girlfriend? But then he came over, looking all serious. "Jake," he said, "I know I've said it before, but I'm sorry. What I did, it was messed up. I was going through some stuff, but that's no excuse. I just wanted you to know I regret it, every day." I looked at him for a long moment. The anger I'd felt before, it wasn't there anymore. In its place was just tiredness. Sadness, maybe, for the friendship we'd lost. "I appreciate that, Mike," I said finally. "What's done is done. We can't change the past, but we can move forward, right?" He nodded, looking relieved. "We're not friends, not by a long shot. But we can be in the same room now without it being weird, and that's something. As for Sarah, well, that's a whole other story. I heard through the grapevine that she and that new guy she was dating didn't work out. Apparently, he found out she'd cheated on her ex, that would be me, and couldn't trust her. Karma's a bitch, huh? I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little vindicated when I heard that. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the girl I thought I knew. Sad for the future we'd planned that would never come to be. Last I heard, Sarah's moved to a new city, trying to start fresh. Part of me hopes she's learned from what happened, that she's grown. Another part of me is just glad I don't have to see her around anymore. But you know what? As much as what Sarah did hurt me, as much as it shook my world and made me question everything I thought I knew about love and trust, I'm grateful. Yeah, you heard that right. Grateful. Because if Sarah hadn't cheated, if I hadn't gone through all that pain and heartbreak, I might never have ended up where I am now. I might never have gotten that promotion, might never have met Lisa. I might still be working those crazy hours thinking that's what love looked like. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying cheating is okay. It's not. It sucks. And it hurts like hell. But sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best places. Lisa and I were talking about the future the other night. Not in a pressury way, just casually. Kids, marriage, all that stuff. And you know what? For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. Not anxious, Not worried about working myself to the bone to prove something. Just excited. I've learned a lot over the past year and a half. About myself, about relationships, about what really matters in life. I've learned that working yourself to death doesn't equal love. That it's okay to prioritize yourself sometimes. That trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, but not impossible. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the things we think will break us are actually the things that make us stronger. That setback can lead to comeback if you let it. So yeah, Sarah cheated on me. She broke my heart, shattered my trust, and for a while there I thought she'd broken me. But she didn't. I'm still here, still standing. And you know what? I'm happier now than I ever was with her. To anyone out there going through something similar, I want you to know, it gets better. It might not feel like it now, but it does. You're stronger than you think, and there's a whole life waiting for you on the other side of this pain. As for me, I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. Maybe it's marriage with Lisa. Maybe it's kids down the line. Maybe it's none of that. But whatever it is, I know I'll face it head on, with the lessons I've learned and the strength I've gained.